Hi everyone, I'm Selina, an author, a developmental editor and fiction writing coach, and I'm one of the hosts of this podcast.
And I'm Jarryd, an author, therapist, and the other host of our podcast.
Welcome to A Sense of Wonder, the podcast,
where we mix together a bunch of ingredients to help motivate you and support you to stay mentally well while you're getting your creative on.
A Sense of Wonder is all about recapturing the sense of awe and magic that we all had as kids, but the act of adulting sometimes diminishes.
You're tuning into episode number 1, and we are honestly thrilled you could join us.
So thanks for coming and being with us. Let's get into it. Practicing gratitude, Jarryd. What's your first bit of gratitude for episode 1?
How about you go first?
My bit of gratitude is we're experiencing very high temperatures right now around where Jarryd and I live in New South Wales, and there is a fire not too far away. I'm very grateful for air conditioning and the fact that we're safe at this point, and I'm sending out my positive vibes for everybody to be well and safe in this very difficult time with the fires around us in Victoria and New South Wales.
As someone who doesn't have aircon and only has an old swampy, which is an evaporative cooler, for those of you who don't know what that term means, I wish I was at Selina's. What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for my pooch, my little pup. Well, I can't say pup. She's 6 years old. We only just adopted her a couple of months ago. And she is a joyous, muscly little bundle of insanity I've owned dogs my whole life. She's the most affectionate animal I've ever owned, and she just brings me joy every time I trip over her, look at her, or she jumps on the bed or the couch or whatever else and just snuggles up to spend time with me.
Bless. And for people out there, what are you grateful for? I'd really love for you to take a moment to jot down one to three little ideas of things that have made you feel gratitude. It's always good to take stock and think about what we're grateful for.
All right, yeah, tools of the trade. So as Selina mentioned at the top of the show, she's a developmental editor and a writing coach, which means she helps authors sort out their story, find their inspiration, stay on track. Like there's a whole bunch. Being a writing coach is actually a pretty complex thing. So we thought that in the podcast, it would be really handy for some of you to, number one, get a taste of what being a writing coach or having a writing coach is like. And number two, to learn a little bit about some of the advice and some of the support they can give. So Tools of the Trade, which is this little segment, is a big focus on Selina and what she does as a writing coach. So take it away.
Okay, so this is about writing tips and hints. My first tip for you is to be mindful when you're writing third person, close or limited point of view, because what happens is we get really into the story and we forget that we're only looking through one character's head, heart and body. We're only experiencing the world through them. And we forget and we jump into another character's head, heart and body in the middle of a scene. And what that is called is head hopping. And it's really easy to do in third person because we forget and we're just enjoying it. And we want the reader to know what's happening on the inside of the other character. But third person close point of view or third person point of view and first person point of view are just like you are a human being. You can't know what's actually happening inside the head, heart and mind of another person. You have to interpret their body language. You have to listen to the intonation of their voice. You have to hear what they're saying and put it through your own filters. And that's what your point of view character is doing in the scene. And the challenge with point of view is sometimes, especially as when often new writers will start to write from an omniscient point of view. And omniscient is like this all-knowing, God-like voice in the story. And they know pretty much everything about every character. And they can go into and tell you about what's happening inside of the other characters. But it's actually a voice outside of a point of view character. It's not the point of view character as such. I like to think about point of view a bit like a camera lens. And for those who are on the audio, I have my Canon EO5 camera, which I'm not great at taking photos and video on, but I love it. Anyway, so what you do is you think about it sitting on your shoulder. So the camera's sitting on your shoulder and this is your point of view. And everywhere that the lens is looking, that's where your point of view character is looking. But it's not on the shoulder of the other person they're talking to. So you can't know what they're seeing, if that makes sense. You can only interpret it. And this lens can look inside your head as the point of view character, but they can't go over to the other character and look inside their head because that lens doesn't move from the point of view character's shoulder. So it can go in their heart, it can go in their head, and it can go into their body, but it can't jump into the other person's head, heart, and body. And that's a really great tip for when you're writing. So when you're writing, look at what you've written and go, have I jumped out of my point of view character? Am I suddenly telling the reader what their internal thoughts are when I'm writing in third person close or third person limited? So close is the narrator is right next to you. So does that make sense, Jarryd? Have I explained that well?
Yeah, look, that's a fantastic tip. I think that and show don't tell are two of the hardest things that I constantly struggle with as a writer. So yeah, that's a great tip.
If you want examples of point of view for omniscient done really, really well, look at J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. That is in omniscient. Neil Gaiman tends to write in omniscient, and so did Terry Pratchett. And they do it very, very well. My advice is if you're a new writer, really learn how to write in first person and third person close because that's the most common kind of writing these days. That's what people want. They want intimacy with the character, whereas omniscient tends to put distance between you as the reader and the character. So try and be more intimate if you can.
We'll move on to the next segment, which is called My Mind Matters. So we thought when we were putting the podcast together, what can set us apart a little bit? And we looked at what each of us as individuals bring to the table, not just as people who love writing and who consider themselves to be a bit creative, but, you know, what from our work histories and our personal life can we inject into the podcast that might be really interesting for people who are listening? My Mind Matters is taking advantage of my 30 years as a therapist working in all sorts of different environments with all sorts of different clients. My first tip to help you stay mentally well is around nostalgia. So nostalgia is thinking back on times that were meaningful to us that can trigger dopamine, which is the motivation and reward chemical our bodies produce, and oxytocin, which is the connection and bonding chemical that our bodies produce. So essentially, nostalgia helps to create a feel-good vibe inside of us most of the time. It can also remind us of who we are and what we value. Even better, when life gets messy, it can anchor us to place and purpose, and also to our family and our friends. There's some really interesting research which is being done at the moment that connects nostalgia to personal resilience. Resilience is a bit of a buzzword. You've probably heard it in regards to everything. And I really do need to point out that the mental health profession is still trying to understand resilience. We thought we were on top of it, found out we weren't. There's a lot of exciting research happening in that space. But what we have learned is that nostalgia can help enhance our resilience, our overall emotional stability, particularly if we focus on past triumphs, the things that we've succeeded at overcoming. So nostalgia also creates a sense of connection and belonging, even when people are gone or, you know, may have moved away from us. So the science is it's been shown to increase dopamine, our motivation and reward chemicals, oxytocin, bonding and safety. It's an endorphin release as well, which produces emotional comfort, and it releases serotonin. That's our mood stability. All that mixes up in our brains and generally makes us feel pretty good. A quick warning, nostalgia can be unhelpful if we allow ourselves to sink into thoughts like, life was better back then, I peaked when I was younger, nothing is ever going to match any of the successes I had in my past. Thoughts like those can tip us towards sadness. If you feel that's starting to happen, if you do decide to use nostalgia as a little bit of a stabilizing trick if you're feeling down, then redirect your thoughts and think about something pretty innocent, like the meal that you're going to cook tonight, a piece of beautiful art you saw, a great book you read, the protagonist in the novel that you're creating, or something else that usually focuses you and helps to lift you up. That's a quick, easy, very simple mental health tip for episode 1.
Awesome. I know that when I think back on the good things that I've done, it really helps to boost my mental health and well-being. And I think as writers, it's really, or just creatives, it's really important to take note of what we've done well because our brains kind of go to the negative a lot. So yeah, even having a list of all the cool things you've done and how it made you feel is a nice way to get through difficult times as well.
This is a gross overgeneralization because that's a really good point that Selena has just raised. But I'm going to indulge in this overgeneralization. A lot of writers are introverts, and introverts are people who are frequently happy inside their own head. But, our mind can become a little bit of a trap sometimes. So being able to pull ourselves out of that and to engage in thought processes that can lift us up and remind us that we are, a vital, exciting, important voice, that we are a part of our world, a part of our community, and what we do matters. That can be really important. I think that authors often forget that your voice is amazing. The arts in general, whether you're painting, whether you're acting, whether you're a writer, no matter what you do, the arts express the heart and soul of a culture. So they're incredibly important. And I don't know if writers reflect enough over that power that they wield when they're crafting their words together. A lot of what we will
Mm,
write is a flight of fancy. It's an adventure, or it's exciting, it's scary, it's romantic, and it's indulgent, and our readers want to indulge in those particular sensations of falling in love or being afraid or whatever it might be. But nevertheless, it's art and it's influencing and it's helping people to connect and to feel less isolated and alone. And quite often, particularly when we're looking at cultures that might not be as well represented as others, if we're including those cultures and doing it carefully and respectfully and really appropriately, then people feel seen as well. So art is so important, no matter
mm.
what form of art we choose to, express and show to the world.
Yes, 100%. So, on to segment 4, feeding or fouling. That's FOULING, not
Not
birds.
FOWLING. No chickens are being used or harmed in this podcast in any way, shape, or form. So, feeding or fouling is about the things that Selena and I have done that have either fed our creativity or, if we feel up to it, fouled it. And we would also love to hear from you guys in the comments about what you do to feed your creativity or what little mess you might have gotten yourself into that fouled your creativity. Do you want to go first, Selena? Do you have a feed or a
Sure.
foul?
I have a feed, I think. My feed is I actually took some time for self care today. This morning, it's very, very hot. I've just like 40 plus degrees here. And this morning, before it got to quite that hot, I happened to go outside with my dogs and one of our cats on the lead. And we've got a little patch of beautiful green grass that was in the shade. And I just laid down on that and watched the sky and like the light bit of clouds. And it is so good for your mind and for my mind and my nervous system. Just sort of lay down and relax on the grass and stop engaging in the world of things like social media and stuff and stop scrolling and just take a moment to be in nature. So for me, it really it fed me because I don't do that very often and I need to do it more. And it just felt so good. That's me. How about you? What's your feeding or
First,
fouling?
first, I'm going to tease you. Selena and I were actually joking about this recently in one of the rare moments where we got to catch up face to face. And we saw ourselves on screen. And a lot of Selena's work is indoors, and a lot
Mm.
of my work is outdoors. And she's got this beautiful, beautiful complexion, whereas I'm covered in sun damage and quite, you know, I don't go brown, I go pink, So we have very different lives. Hearing that she went outside and laid in the grass and looked at the sun warms my heart. I often worry about you. You're such a dedicated writer and such a dedicated
Um,
coach that you're frequently indoors, curtains drawn, tapping away at the computer, talking to people and inspiring them. And I keep wanting to just make my way to your house, grab you, kick you in the bum and throw you outside and see if you go poof, in a big bunch of flames like a vampire or something when you see light.
do you think I'm a vampire? I might be. Yeah, no, I definitely did that today. And I do have an audiobook that talks about doing less to be more. I think it's by Australian authors. And it talks about the importance of just stopping and giving your brain breaks and your body breaks from being in front of screens and having to do the doing all the time. And so for me, it was a really great feeding experience. Okay, now no more avoiding it. What's your feeding or fouling?
So I failed. So it's January 2026 as we're doing this. Our first podcast will come out this episode in a few days. But what that means is that we've just come off Christmas and New Year's. Last year was a bugger for me. I hated it. It was a very bad year. Lots of really bad things happened in my life professionally and personally. When the Christmas and New Year's break hit, I kind of resorted to a very old bad habit, which is I devoured a lot of really bad food. And normally my diet's really, really clean, no processed stuff, not a lot of chocolate or anything else like that. But I binged like a crazy man over the Christmas and New Year's period. Probably it was a 2-week holiday. By the end of the first week, I was starting to feel really, really sluggish. My brain just wasn't switching on. I wasn't feeling inspired. I wasn't feeling motivated. And I was actually feeling a bit confounded at times. Selina dragged me to the gym probably in my beginning of the second week and got me back into that. And I started to feel good. So that fed me. But I'm still getting rid of those residual side effects of just indulging in a bad diet because I wasn't outdoors. I wasn't on the job, traveling all over the place like normal. I was just kind of lying on the couch, binging Netflix and, all of the other streaming services like a bit of a beached whale.
Don't be too hard on yourself, though. I think that there's a need for a bit of self-kindness as well, because you have a very, very busy life. You're often pulled from pillar to post, to be totally cliche about it, but it's true. Taking some downtime to do that, even if you did indulge a little bit, it's not like it's forever. I hope not. But you know what I mean? Caring, just being a little bit more compassionate, I think, is an important thing there. And that's not just for you, but for anybody who feels bad that they, took some time out and sat on the couch and watched something. You're allowed, you're allowed to. I'm sure that there's so much more going on in your life and it's okay. The challenge is when it becomes something that takes over your life. That's when it's a real fouling, when it stops you from doing your creative work or it stops you from being in your important relationships and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you for that little bit of kindness
You
there.
practice. You did some practice, Jarryd.
You
Okay,
can
so we
talk.
move on.
Yes.
What's the
Yes.
next section?
I won't air all of your dirty laundry about how hard you work.
I work too much, people.
Let's say she's been a bit of a hypocrite, folks.
I am. I am terrible at the moment. I am building a business and it is a lot of work. It's more work than I ever expected, but it's work I love, which does make it hard for me to take time out. I am learning through the real life experience of getting exhausted and overcommitting. But I talk about that in other episodes. We'll keep going into that, I'm sure. Everyone will know what a workaholic I am in the future.
This is the bad thing about doing a podcast with a friend that you have known for when did we meet? The mid 1990s?
Yeah, I think it was mid to late. Yeah, about 1997, 98, thereabouts.
It's been over 20 years, almost 30 years that we've known each other. We haven't always been in each other's pockets, but we always found our way back to each other. So it's one of those friendships I think the universe is preordained. We were meant to be together no matter how much we tried to run away from each other. We just always end up back in each other's circles. So, we know all the good and bad and incredibly ugly stuff about each other. So no doubt some of those will pop up now and again throughout the podcast as we rib each other's mercilessly, I would say. We're probably going to be too honest sometimes.
Well, stick with us if you want to find that out. There's a teaser for the future for you. All right, back to segment 5, which is time for a chat.
Yeah, time for a chat. So this normally we would try and bring through someone to interview, but because this is the first episode, we thought maybe for episode 1 and 2, it would help you guys to get to know us. So as you know, we're a brand new podcast. And though a few of the people who are following A Sense of Wonder also follow us on our socials, a lot of people who will tune in, they don't know much about us. So we thought it might be probably smart to, I guess, build that relationship at the very beginning and a few get to know you questions. And Selina, you get the first question. Are you okay with that?
I am.
All right, let's go. So,
I'm ready.
You ready? Gird your loins. All righty. So you're a developmental editor and you're a writing coach, as you said at the beginning.
Yes.
Now, what does that actually mean and why or how does what you do help experienced or aspiring authors?
I'm a professionally trained coach. I learned that when I was working at a university in Queensland for leadership coaching. But I also I fell in love with writing a very long time ago, and I've always had a bit of a love affair with structure and how do you do this writing craft stuff. And I enjoy teaching people. So I went and learned how to become a fiction book coach. That taught me to do developmental editing, manuscript assessments, and editorial reports, which allow me to give next steps to writers so they don't sit there in the dark trying to figure out, what do I work on first? Work on your structure and your characters first, then work on the more icing on the cake types of things. I also have a mentor who works closely with me if I have any troubles. She's got 30 years editorial experience behind her and is intimate with the publishing industry. So I am surrounded by people who really know their stuff. As a developmental editor and fiction book coach, I understand story development and I guide aspiring authors and those who are already seasoned authors, because let's face it, every story is new. And even if we do have our tools in our toolbox, not every story cooperates with us and we have to find new tools for it. So a fiction book coach is somebody who understands story development from idea through to drafted manuscript, and I support people from their ideas, outlining, writing their scenes, supporting them to have a finished manuscript draft that they're proud to pitch or publish. And I can also help with pitching to agents or helping you to navigate some self-publishing parts of the industry. I ask powerful questions using developmental editing as a part of the process. So I'll look at your story and I will get to know you and I will understand your story, your personal goals, and your long-term author career aspirations. And the coaching surrounds that as well as, so not just about the story, but about where do you want to go? Who is your ideal reader? What genre are you writing in? How are you going to approach marketing this story? Thinking about world building and setting and thinking about the narrative drive. So is there an inciting incident? Does it have rising action? Does it come to a climax? Is there a resolution? Or is the story a bit of a mud map at the moment and we need to give it more form? I provide developmental editing and coaching feedback on work as you're writing it. And then I have one-to-one Zoom conversations with people where we go through the feedback, or we might brainstorm, or they might read me or I might read their stuff and we might work on it together over the Zoom and they'll get a recording of it. So everything from cheerleading to keeping you accountable to helping you outline, write the story. I don't write it for you. I support you in helping you to get your voice on the page, get your story on the page, to synopsis writing, writing query letters, and coming up with pitching strategies for you to pitch your story to agents and publishers. I understand quite a lot of different things, and if I don't understand it, I will say I am not as familiar with that just yet, and I will go away and research it and learn it as much as I can to help you. And if it's out of my wheelhouse, then I will help you find somebody who is more appropriate to work with. But I also hope that when I get people who come to me, they are willing to be coached, because there are some writers who are very emotionally attached to what they've written, which is totally understandable. You know, we're putting our heart and soul onto the page. But to grow in our story writing skills and in our writing in general, we need feedback. And to do that, we have to let go a little bit and be willing to cut certain things or change things for the sake of the story. And sometimes writers can be argumentative about that. And although I understand that, that's not someone who's coachable. A coachable person is open to feedback and open to developing their skills and moving from where they are to where they want to be, rather than holding themselves in space by arguing about what they want to keep in their current story. So that's sometimes a bit of tough love from a fiction coach, but it's usually always provided with honesty, kindness, and compassion. I'm very mindful of the person behind the words.
That's
So
great.
does that answer it?
Yeah. Well and truly. So I've had Selina as a writing coach, and I was probably at the very beginning one of those uncoachable people because I was so deeply emotionally attached to my story. And Selina worked with me, and I can really attest to two things: the compassion, definitely, like she got it because she's an author. She
Hmm.
knows the emotional ties that we have to our characters and the situations, and she knows the amount of work we put into it. So the compassion definitely, and also the amount of work she does in between. And she preps herself and she preps the document, the chapter that you might be working on or the single scene or whatever it is. She does so much prep work. It's pretty amazing. I've never worked with a writing coach that comes that prepared. And I think, I don't know if Selena will agree, hopefully she will, but I'm going to give a bit of a reality check because I think some people just don't get the importance of it. But if you're an athlete, you have to train constantly to be at the top of your game. In my industry, as I'm a psychotherapist, we have to train constantly for our registration so that we are on top of all the latest modalities and changes in mental health because we hold people's lives in our hands when they come to us for counseling. So authors, if you want to be good at your craft, you need to be constantly challenged and equally validated, and you need to be training up. Like I didn't quite get that at the very beginning, but as my journey with Selena as my coach went along, I was able to relate to it and go, well, yeah, if you don't use a muscle, it atrophies. If you just keep doing the same exercises over and over and over again, you don't necessarily get healthier. You just tire out a muscle or it gets abnormally large. You need to exercise other parts as well. And Selena kind of encourages you to look to the left, look to the right, look up and down. I'm like, one of the best things that she gave me, one of the best bits of advice is, there's been so much, but one that constantly sticks with me every time I open up a Word document to start writing is, what can they smell? What can they hear? What can they feel? Which is actually, that's a technique that we use in therapy to calm people down. But in writing, like Selena was saying, it's not just about what the character's saying. If you want to really bring the audience into their inner life, into the character's inner life and into the story, then talk about what they're smelling and talk about the sun on their face or the rain hitting their head or whatever it might be. And I know that when I've read those bits back, when I've applied that particular rule, the story is so much richer as a result.
Yes. Yeah. It really pulls the reader in. Sensory detail, and it's a great way of showing over telling. The challenge is sometimes we say the character felt X, Y, and Z, but really, if we're inside of that character's point of view, we don't need the words that they felt it. Just let us feel what they've felt. Their heart palpitated. I know what that feels like. It's like little butterflies in my chest for me. And if I describe that, that's a sensory detail. It's a feeling one, it's a kinesthetic one. But yeah, you got taste and you got smell, and those sensory details will transport a reader into a character's world more successfully than if you're telling them that they smelled the manure, you know, just let them smell the old hay and the manure on the streets, or I'd hate to go in the darker side of things, but the urine, and the sewer. When I say those things, or I say, taste the lemon, everyone knows what it tastes like, something sour. You can get closer to the character in the moment, but make it relevant to your scene, obviously.
And there's a lot to it. Like what Selena was just saying there, like in my current job, I work with a lot of farmers and I've been on more than one dairy farm, and the smell, you can taste it and you can feel it on your skin. So
Yep.
I don't recommend that you necessarily go visit a dairy farm and have that experience, but rarely is a
But
scent just one thing.
if you're writing something in a rural environment, people who work and live in a rural environment will know immediately if you have never smelt cow manure or, cattle or horses and stuff like that. So it's really good to try and get out and maybe journal about those smells. We've gone off on a tangent, but the point is become more observant of the sensory details, and it'll really enrich your writing. There's
And
another tip for you.
And a coach will nudge you to do that. Now, I'm just going to be brutally honest. So at the moment, country romances, rural romances, particularly in Australia, are really popular. They've
Mm.
got a huge resurgence of interest. And being somebody who lives in a small country town, but works in around about 100 small country towns, if I'm reading a rural romance and it's just not authentic, it's not representative of what I know to be true, I put that book down, even if it's only page 3
Yes.
and I'm pissed off at it. It's like, no, this person is just having a bit of a fantasy. They haven't done their research. Why did I just waste $10 on Kindle for this? And I move on to the next book. So, you've really, I suppose, got to not pay your dues so much as make sure that you're bringing as much truth as you can, because there are going to be readers like me out there who are going, no, you've just painted a completely inaccurate picture there. And I kind of lost all respect for you. See you later.
Yeah, yeah, you must be mindful. Do your research is the upshot of that. Do your research, do your sensory writing, and if you don't know for sure, make sure you find a reader who lives or works in that environment who can provide you with that feedback. Because although I'm a fiction book coach, I'm not an expert on absolutely everything. I'll talk to you about character motivations and goals and conflicts and story and setting, but I'm not going to know if a horse is saddled right. I don't ride horses. But if somebody who does, they will know if you haven't done it, if you haven't described it correctly. And that will probably pull them out of the story and they won't want it anymore. So my job as a fiction coach is not to know the ins and outs of absolutely everything, but to guide you to find the right way to find that information for yourself. And if you don't do the work, the only person you hurt in the end is your own self and your own writing reputation. So, there is a sense of it's a partnership when you're working with a coach. I'll help shore you up and help you with your writing and your writing craft and your mindset and moving forward with confidence. But you also need to bring the story. You need to be the one to be committed to getting the work done, the person that is willing to go and figure out how to saddle a horse if you've never been on one, like go and learn to ride a horse or just have that experience so you can describe it better. Like not everything you write about you can have an experience of, but there are people out there that know and you can tap into them. So, yeah, I just got to be clear about where it's a partnership and I'm, of course, not going to be able to give you everything of everything.
No, but you'll say, well, have you visited a local farm? Have you talked to a farmer or whatever else? Do you know any truck drivers? Have you ever played with a dog? Because a dog features heavily in your work. Like you'll be asking those particular questions. And I know that because you've asked me. And one of the things I love about working with Selina is she's also an accountability partner. So
Hmm.
not only is she saying, are you writing? And not only am I getting texts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday, have you written anything this week? She's also like working with people and saying, well, do you have a sensitivity reader? You have a character who's gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, non-binary. Have you actually gone out to those communities and tried to engage with people? You have a
Mm,
character who's from Africa. You have a First Nations person. Have you spoken with Mob? Have you spoken with anybody who's come from Somalia or Nigeria
mm,
or one of the African countries? She's asking those really important questions that, number one, will show how much you respect your subject matter if you actually do go out there and do the research, and number two, make you really so much better at what you do, because it just sparks off all these new thoughts. And I find it really inspirational. And I love that there's somebody who has my back who's going, oh, you've created a character. She's your main protagonist. She's female. You're a guy. You don't necessarily think like a woman. Have you thought about having some women read this to see if that character is representative of how, you know, particular women of a particular age or a particular culture might feel? So I love those questions because they really make me realize that I'm accidentally being a little bit blind and I'm stumbling around. And they also
mm.
challenge me to take on some really valuable feedback that is only going to make my story better.
Yeah. And I think sensitivity readers are worth their weight in gold. They're really as well. But remember, they are one opinion within a group. So you might need to find a couple of readers in that group that and look for the common feedback, because rather than only taking one person's opinion. Um, so there's lots there. We will continue to unpack this stuff over the next
Mm.
couple of episodes, I'm sure. Yeah, that's what a fiction book coach is and does. And thank you for the lovely feedback. I really appreciate it because I always ask my clients, do you have any feedback for me as a fiction book coach? Have I helped you get where you want to go? What do you need in order to become, to from me as a fiction book coach to help you as a writer? So I learned that as a coach the importance of asking for feedback from your client. And not every coach does that I've noticed, but that's okay. That's their own process. But my process is I ask for feedback. Okay.
And
So,
last thing on this, obviously, Selena and I are friends. I could just
yeah.
be saying a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm
Hmm.
also a stubborn, opinionated,
Yes.
basically.
Don't say that.
If if Selena was giving me bad advice and if I wasn't growing from it, no matter how much I love her as a human being, I wouldn't work with her. I would go and work with somebody else. But she is,
That when I first gave you feedback, I felt quite terrified. Gonna never forgive me and never want to be. I was so careful about what I said and how I said it because I knew how much the story meant to you as well. And I also knew that so that everybody has limits of how much feedback they can take and how much can be raw honesty. Like, I would never say to a writer, this is boring because that's so destructive. Like, and it doesn't matter whether their story is not, engaging me at the time. It's more that why isn't it engaging at the moment? And that's where the learning opportunity is. So, like, that feedback is not helpful to anybody to say to somebody that their story is boring. If you've ever said that to somebody, you need a moment in the naughty corner.
you need a
Think
little
that,
slap.
you need to be mindful that that's someone else's work and it wasn't
Yeah.
boring to them. They loved writing it. They were having it. They were learning and growing. Remember the human being behind the words. We can always get better at writing. It's a skill.
And there are certainly writers who stick to a formula and they churn out the same sort of book over and over and over
And that's cool.
with different character names. And that works for them and they're making shit tons of money. But
Mm,
most writers, their heart and their soul is on the page. And
mm.
you've got to be so careful when you're dealing with that, I reckon.
Yep. Moving on.
Shall we move on?
Yes, everybody's sick of listening to me. So, Jared, what genre do you write in? What genres do you write in?
Nice, simple questions. Predominantly for romance. And yes,
Only four.
rural romance because I live and work in a rural area and have for many years and love living in the country. I have lived in
Mhm.
Melbourne. I have lived just outside of Brisbane. I've lived in Canberra. They're the biggest cities that I've been in. Hate them. Not a fan of cities at all. But I do love rural communities, small communities. So romance, and I personally think that at the core of every good story is usually a romance. There's some sort of a connection, and if it's not a romance, then it's say it's a story about two cops who work together. There's a bit of brotherhood there. It's a deep relationship with deep feeling. I really love that sort of stuff. And I also write in horror because I'm a massive horror fan. Science fiction because I am a huge geek and I do love my sci-fi. And I'm starting to get back into fantasy. I kind of went off it for a number of years. I just read a couple of books that didn't do it for me and it kind of spoiled the entire genre. So I pushed it
Mm.
aside. But I've recently discovered a few really fantastic fantasy novels that have come out recently, and they've reignited that love that I had for the fantasy genre when I was growing up. Because I was one of those nerdy kids who played Dungeons and Dragons and devoured all of the fantasy novels that he could find in his local library. So yeah, I did love it, but I did fall out of love with it for a while. It's nice to kind of
Mm.
be dipping my toe back in there again.
Think
So,
too,
sorry.
sorry, I just was going to say that I'm not surprised that happened in some ways because genres are about emotions as well. Fantasy is about wonder, being transported into another world. And if the author hasn't done a good enough job of that, it actually does ruin that experience for the reader. They don't want to read it anymore. So they can take a bit of a step away from it and go find something else that nourishes their emotional requirements. Sorry, what else were you going to say?
Just before I
Yes,
was just going
rural
to ask the
romance.
same question of you, but before that, I was going to kind of just say we have a lot of responsibility as authors because we really can spoil a genre for someone. I know I'm not the only person who's read a bad book or two and gone, nah, I'm going to go read murder mysteries now. I'm done. We do have a lot of responsibility. We carry entire genres on our shoulders. We've got to try and do well with it. Question, are
But
you, okay, you interrupt. Come on, you interrupt me. Do it.
I am going to interrupt. But I just want to be mindful that Yes, we do have a responsibility to do the genre justice. I don't want anybody to feel overwhelmed and be worried that you're not
No,
doing
I
it
do.
justice.
Be overwhelmed, be worried. Yeah.
You do not.
No,
Jared
I don't.
doesn't like and he's not like that. He's just being funny. The important thing is to be mindful of what your genre is. Know your genre and then write in it. Or even if you write in it first and then you go and learn about it, go and learn about it and then put that also into your story. Not plagiarize it, but those aspects, those important parts and obligatory scenes of the genre that are needed. Like romance must have a happily ever after or a happy for now. If you do not have that, it is not a romance. And romance readers will know and they will not like it if you have put your book out as a romance and then they did not get together and have a happily ever after. The book will be thrown across the room.
And you'll get a bad review on Goodreads and anywhere else they can review you.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I don't know, Jared, what do you think about horror? What would spoil a horror story for people? I mean, it's a very big genre. Let's say that as a caveat.
I think that if you're unable to maintain tension and escalate that tension to the point where the reader's nerves are frayed, then
Mm,
you might want to explore something a little different, maybe step
mm,
sideways into thriller territory or into mystery territory. Because I know when I read a horror book, I want to be lulled into a false sense of security to begin with. Then I want to
mm,
feel uneasy. Then I want to
mm-hmm.
feel a little tense and a little nervous. And by the time I'm reaching the climax of the story, I want to be checking under my bed and checking that the front door is locked and making sure there's nobody hiding in my wardrobe before I go to sleep. Like I really want to, I read horror because I want that. What's going to happen? I want to be feeling tense and, excited. And then I want that release at the end. I do not like horrors where everybody dies.
Yeah.
I do want a hero at the end, and quite often I want the hero to be unexpected. One of my favorite movies of all time is the original 1979 Alien. Sigourney Weaver's character, Ripley, she was not the obvious hero. She doesn't even
Mhm.
necessarily do a great deal in the first half of the movie, but she's the one who survives. And I loved that it wasn't exactly a twist because throughout Alien, the tension just kept building and bodies kept falling in grotesque ways and you just didn't know who was going to make it. But we all kind of expected Tom Skerritt's character of Dallas, the captain. We thought, well, he'll make it because it's the 90s. It was a bit of more of a misogynistic time. The men often were the heroes, but Ridley Scott, the director of the original Alien, turned it all on its head. Female hero, she makes it. The guys all die. And you're terrified right up until the last few frames. But those last few frames, you get this beautiful shot of her and her cat curling up in a cryogenic chamber and going to sleep. And you know that the alien's gone. You know he's dead and floating off in space. You get that come down, which releases you as well. So for me, a really good horror story needs to give me the chance to exhale and to have a celebratory moment. Even if it's only 3 pages at the end, I don't care. Just give me the chance to exhale because if you've done your job as a horror author, I've been holding my breath for about 10 chapters and I deserve to go, phew, all right. That's, for me, they're the ingredients that I look for in a really good horror.
Yeah. And I think it's very much personal taste, a lot of different people, and there's lots of quiet ones. Like I've got this anthology called Cozy Krampus, which is a collection of short stories all with the Krampus demon.
Yeah.
And the one by Lauren Ellie Daniels, which is Krampus Air, it's actually horror comedy. So it was funny as well as terrifying and feeling anxious and dread and all that sort of stuff, but it was so realistic as well. And I found myself snort laughing at this particular story, and I was like, "Am I supposed to be snort laughing at a horror story?" But I was, and it was great fun. And I think there's lots of different types of horror and it's like the same with romance. Lots of different
Mm.
options from sweet to full on spicy, which is close off and the doors open, and you get to experience every single part of the act. And then there's the closed door ones. So there's lots of different options. Anyway, so
I just want to say, Celine, you've paired two things together beautifully that I don't think a lot of people realize go together really well: horror and comedy. Another one of my favorite series is the Evil Dead series, but particularly the TV series Ash versus the Evil Dead. It is obnoxious amounts of gore. It is jump scare horror. It is deep mythology stuff that's, the Evil Dead series has been around since the early 80s, I think, but it's also hilarious. So you get these scares and these moments of holding your breath, and then you get to exhale with the stupid, idiotic stuff that Ash Williams, the main character, does, or some
Mm.
other character might do. And it's this great roller coaster. But Ash versus the Evil Dead, it always ends terrifyingly. And the exhale at the end of the terror as you have your cliffhanger for the next episode, there's always a bit of humor. So it's like they don't leave you hanging in this horrible suspense. They do give you that exhale moment. But it's just so much more of a roller coaster. Comedy horror is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and it is. I like it. I think it's probably one of my favorite genres is comedy horror or horror comedy. I think they call it horror comedy. Anyway, that's what it says on here. I know, witness the cosmic horror of the holidays, but it is horror comedy, cozy cosmic horror of the holiday season. Anyway, we're past Christmas, but it is fun. Put that on your next Christmas list. Okay, right back to the questions.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, I was going to bounce the same question back at you. What genres do you write in?
Okay, super quick. I write pretty much paranormal everything. I think I've only ever written one contemporary spicy short story, which I will one day put out into the world. I
I've read
was
it. It's
bright
really
red
good.
writing that.
It's good.
I was bright red writing that. I have a
I was
girlfriend
bright red
who
reading that. It was like, hold on. Well, you're a lot more wholesome than this young lady, but no,
I'm going red just thinking about it.
I
It's not
think
for
I am
everybody.
too. It's not just the 43-degree heat. It's like, whew.
So I write paranormal mostly, and I write paranormal romance, paranormal mystery, and paranormal horror. And I'm working on a paranormal mystery with romantic elements and horror beats. I tend to like to mash up genres. That's my favorite at the moment. I love cozy murder mysteries, and because I love the puzzle and I love seeing the sleuth be nosy, but I also like the romantic elements. And of course, if it's scary and there is a ghost or a vampire or something that's from another world, like a beast, I'm on board. I like it. Don't mind if it's a bit dark or there's psychic abilities, and I love that. I find it hard to write contemporary without paranormal elements. It's just part of my world. Does me?
You need to send Selena some love. So I'm one of Selena's beta readers. She'll send stories over to me or she'll send chapters over to me. And quite often my response will be, do you have to have do you have to have a Fakasha vampire in there? Because I can't stand vampires. I don't get it. I know lots of people love vampires and werewolves and all the rest of that. And mythology-wise, yeah, love them. But if I see another vampire book or another werewolf book, I'm just going to set fire to it. But
Don't.
we get through that phase and she says, yes, there has to be a vampire in there. But look, if you ever become friends with Selena, Christmas books should always have some sort of ghost, zombie, vampire, werewolf, some crazy paranormal thing, an angel, whatever. Throw any of that in and she'll love it.
Yep, love it, love it. I love Mary Janice Davidson, who
Yes.
wrote Undead and Unwed about Betsy the Vampire Queen, and I found that really funny. I loved it because it put comedy with romance and horror and paranormal. I love the whole series. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a vampire addict for the rest of my life. I think there's lots of opportunities for vampires. Anyway, moving on. Jarryd, we've known each other for a while, and I'm not sure if everyone knows, well, they don't know, but they'll know now, that you used to be a professional actor. And of course, I've always wanted to know, I'm very curious, how has that helped you as an author?
It's kind of helped and hindered. So
Mm.
I remember when you first started working with me as a coach, you said that as well as having been a professional actor, I was also trained as a screenwriter. And you said, you do fantastic dialogue, but, it's the meat around the dialogue that's not there. So, in acting, you're breaking down words and that's what builds your character. And in screenwriting, you're definitely doing descriptions, but the dialogue is king when you're writing a play or a TV or a film script. So from that perspective, it kind of hindered a little bit. Like I felt like I had to relearn a lot because the
Mm.
very first thing I ever published, I was 19 and it was a play. And writing a novel is very different. Writing a short story is very different to writing a play. Actors are taught, well, you have to have a fantastic imagination. I was in a science fiction show that aired in the US back in about 2015. It was an American production that filmed here in Australia. And I think I was only on the set for maybe a week, but a lot of what we were doing, we had to imagine because they were going to put in the aliens and some of the other special effects in what's called post. You're out in the middle of nowhere and it was outdoor shoots. Yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere and there are aliens coming at you and you have to imagine it. So, acting really activates your imagination. And when I write now, I see everything in my mind. So no matter what I'm writing, it's like a film or a television episode, which is unfolding in my brain. And just a quick shout out to Julian McMahon, that series that I did, he was the star of. May he rest in peace. He only passed away, I think, last year. And I got to say, one of the nicest, most humble, most generous human beings that I've ever met. And I got to, I'm a fan of Charmed. It's one of my secret guilty pleasures, the original Charmed with Shannon Doherty and the others. And of course, he was in that. It was a real kick for me getting to meet and work with Julian McMahon. But yeah, acting, you learn to study people, you learn to watch people, you learn to really pay attention to what eyes do, what the mouth does, how the body moves. And I did mostly a lot of stage work. And that means that when you're on a stage, you have to kind of over accentuate certain traits. So if you're
Okay.
playing a tradie, for example, I would go and spend a few weeks talking to and watching the way that tradies move and the physicality of their body. I played a woman once. One of my very first acting roles on stage was as a woman. So I had to go,
Excellent.
and an older woman. And I think I was 18 at the time, maybe 19. So I had to go and watch and talk to older women and understand how they see the world, how much of their past actually influences everything that they do in the present, the weird
Mm.
cramps and the aches that they feel. And how do you walk in high heels? I had a very, very hard time learning that. And I never really got good at it. And I have big feet. I have size 13 feet. So finding high heels to fit a 6'2" man with size 13 feet, that was a costume nightmare for the costume department. But I really pay attention now to everything. And as a therapist, we're also trained in a similar way. We become experts in body language. We're examining every micro expression that a person has to try and understand what's going on. And for an actor, you're also examining all of those micro expressions. So I find that when I'm writing characters, and once I finally learned what show, don't tell means, that acting stuff really helped me to show instead of tell. So personally, because it was great for my self-esteem, I was a very shy kid. Personally, I think everybody should study acting, but for writers, I think that doing a few acting classes, it'll really open up the body. You become very aware of your own body, but also other people's bodies, and you start to think differently. We're taught something called emotional memory. Not all
Okay.
acting courses teach that,
Mm.
but my acting coach was from the Royal Shakespearean Academy over in the United Kingdom. He'd come to Australia to teach. They do emotional memory, and emotional memory, you take a line of dialogue, a really important line in a scene, and you sit in a chair and you close your eyes and you're focusing on it, and your scene partner or the director is walking around you, and say the line is, I found him and he was dead. So the director will go, all right, he, masculine. Who do you know in your life is masculine? Think about people who are masculine. What are masculine stereotypes like? Is this character, a stereotype? And then he'll get to the word dead and he'll say, have you ever experienced death? So when you do emotional memory work, you really need to be careful. You need experts around you because as an actor, you've got to bring emotion out. It's got to be really genuine. So in emotional memory, you will connect to stuff that could be really confronting, like death. And I remember when I did that scene, it was for Hamlet. I was playing Hamlet. They came to some death stuff and I just had a friend take his life. And it was really, really a heavy moment, but it was also a healing moment as well. And I was able to kind of engage with that word and go deep so that when I was acting, I could bring out the grief. So when I'm
Yeah.
writing, I'm doing that emotional memory work and I'm thinking really carefully. Not one single word that comes out of a character's mouth that I write is arbitrary. Everything is deeply thought about, as well as the consequences for further along in the novel, but also especially the consequences for the emotional arc of the character, if that makes sense.
It
So
does,
yeah, for
yeah.
me,
Well, it does.
acting is a great skill for writing.
I hated drama. I was terrible at it. I could not remember lines. I felt stupid. I just did not enjoy it at all. But maybe one day when I have my second childhood.
Do it. My acting coach said to me, I will never forget this because it has psychologically scarred me for my entire life. He sat me down one day and he said, Jarryd, you're just not attractive enough to be a leading man. But luckily, you're talented enough to be a character actor and you're very good as a character actor. He was giving me a compliment, he thought, but I was a 18 or 19-year-old teenager in his first year at university going, oh my God, if the princess said I'm ugly, what am I going to do? So, acting can be
Well,
it can be a hard taskmaster.
it's yeah, and so can writing. Like, you can put your best work out there and someone will still trash it. Someone will still say something really nasty just because, and it really not about you, it's about them in the end, and not you and your writing. Talk about I'll never understand why people think it's okay to rip to shreds other people's creativity. It's a very cruel thing to do. And if they had it done to them, I suspect they would be crying in the corner and being quite vocal about how much it hurt. Sometimes people don't stop long enough to think, how will this actually come across and how will that other person receive it? Before we go on, and we are very close to time here, I just want to say you said something really important there, that every word that you write in dialogue is thought about and it all has a purpose on the page. In writing, dialogue and all of the rest of it, your narration, that it's the same. It's the same thing for you as a writer. We need to be mindful about what we're putting down on the page so we don't have, as you know, Bob, a dialogue where we're telling the other character something they would already know, or we're not having weather conversations because nobody wants to read that. We want to read the conflict. So really, really important. And I think there's some great correlation there between acting and writing. And they are two different things, but they are also incredibly closely linked. That human side of it's so close.
And whether you're an
Okay.
actor or not, a hot tip for writing good dialogue is read it out loud.
Yes.
I remember I'm a huge Star Wars fan, particularly a Carrie Fisher fan. And I remember seeing an interview with Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford talking about the very first Star Wars released in 1977. And they were both joking about, the story. The story's fantastic. The movie's amazing. But who the hell can say this dialogue? What the hell was George Lucas thinking? Because it's hard, tough dialogue. Read your dialogue out loud because you'll know if it sounds a bit wonky and you'll know if it's working. Because if you're
Mm,
stumbling over it and if your mouth can't form the words, then our brain, as we're forming the words in our mind for the characters we're painting in our heads, we're going to struggle as well. So yeah, read your dialogue in particular out loud.
yeah. Next question.
All right, quick question for you. Let's see if we can make it quick. We're not doing well, Selina. We're really taking our time. All right, so let's see. The test for you is how quickly can you answer this question? Did you make the decision to become a coach because of your own experiences? Because I've been on your writing journey with you for quite a while, and I know that it's been rough, and there's been a lot of discouraging stuff as well as a lot of bright moments. But did you become a coach because of all of that stuff as you tried to get your first book on the page, or because you kept meeting other writers, whether through Bookstagram or whatever, who were struggling and you thought you had something that could help them?
I became a fiction book coach because I wanted to really understand how to write fiction well. And I also knew that by helping others, I would be helping myself to be a better writer. So I jumped into fiction book coaching to really learn more and more about how to understand things like show, don't tell, and point of view and story structure. So I could not only help myself, but help others. And of course, part of the course was we had to work with authors that were actually working on stories. We had to be rigorously reviewed and we had to do video content where people got to see how we were coaching them. And for me, I did that because I wanted to really learn how to develop coaching skills. Well, let me backtrack a bit. I was already a coach, so I knew how to ask really great questions. I was already a writer. I knew how to write a pretty good story. But there were still issues with it. There were still structural issues. There were still motivation issues with the characters, that sort of stuff. And I couldn't quite understand what was going on. And so I decided to become a fiction book coach so I could learn for myself. And then as I was doing that, I was getting more involved in the community of writers, and I was seeing more and more people wanting assistance or needing assistance to figure this out too. At that time, nobody really knew what a fiction book coach was either, though. So it wasn't that they didn't trust me, it's like, well, what is this new thing out here? What do you mean you're a fiction book coach? I've never heard of that. So how could you possibly help me? I just needed developmental edit. But the situation with the developmental edit is you write your novel, you give it to them, they go through and do a broad to specific review of your manuscript from everything from the structure through to sentence level. And they give you a lot of feedback in one go with a report, and it's incredibly overwhelming. And then the editor steps back, and you as the writer are left there figuring out, how do I apply this feedback, and how do I interpret this feedback too? Because sometimes they talk in their own language, not in the language of the writer. And I don't think editors mean to do that, but it's just they're used to talking in terms of, tighten this or conflict that, or and tighten just means trim things like repetition in your story, or the story is lagging, it's a bit flatlining. You're saying it several times over rather than just saying it once. The scene's 3 times longer than it needs to be, so you need to cut it down. And so you need like an interpreter, and a coach kind of does that. So for me, that was not quick at all.
No, it wasn't. That's okay. It was great stuff. And, I'll confess, probably the first few months that Selena worked with me a lot, because she started working with me, encouraged me to join a competition. I think I had 3 days to write it because the competition was about to close. With Selena's help, I got in there and got it done. And
And
then,
you got COVID.
sorry? Oh, yeah, and I got
And you
COVID. I
got
forgot I had
COVID.
COVID through trying to write that bloody short story. I got into the
Mm, mm.
anthology, but I also got a whack of feedback from all of the judges. Selena had to go with me almost through every bit of feedback to explain, because I was like, what the hell are they talking about? I don't know what this means. And blah, 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 blah. And why the hell are they judging this competition if they don't like blah, blah? So she calmed me down and de-escalated me constantly, because I was getting a bit angsty. But she also explained stuff. What do they mean by rising tension? What's rising tension?
Mm.
It was really valuable. And I'm still
Mm.
learning. I think it was only last week I shot Selena a text going, what's an ARC reader? Because people are asking for ARC readers, and does it stand for anything? And how much work is involved in it? So you're always tripping over words and terms.
And shall we just explain that? An ARC reader, ARC, is an advanced reader copy. So the story's already pretty much ready to publish, but it's that copy that readers get to read and review, and they give an honest review based on their actual response. It's not paid. And the idea is to help the author get some traction with reviews, but also it's that way of building buzz about their stories and getting it out there and getting it known. Yeah, and it's an advanced reader copy, ARC. If you want to read a story that's brand new out and before it actually hits bookshelves or Kindle, you sign up and become an ARC reader. Okay, last question, Jarryd. In your current day job, you're a therapist, and you've got a really strong understanding of how the brain works, and in particular, how certain situations can impact a person. So does your background as a mental health professional help or hinder your writing?
That's a really good question. It's kind of like the acting question in that it hinders and it helps. So the way that it hinders is they always say, write what you know, which is why so many of my stories are in a rural environment, but they always have a psychologist or a psychotherapist or some sort of mental health practitioner as the hero. And that's going to get boring for people. I need to kind of branch out a bit there. I do have farmers as heroes as well, but I frequently will throw that mental health stuff in there because I just know it. I've been doing it for 30 years. So in one form or another. So I just really understand that. But in terms of the psychology of a character, so I'm a discovery writer or a pantser. and I let the story write itself. And I love to kind of discover the twists and turns. And it's also become really fun when it gets to the stage where I pass it on for a developmental edit. And someone like Selina, for example, says, you don't need that. And you've gone down a black hole over here, and you can actually cut 3 chapters out. And I know you want a higher word count, but if we do this, and if we focus on this, then your readers are going to love the story and you're going to really enjoy the story too. And she's always right. Even though I pants and make it all up as I go, basically, the story writes itself.
Mm.
I do spend a lot of time on the characters. I wait to meet the characters. So I'll have a name. For some reason, the way my brain works, I can't write a character unless the character has a name. I have a name and I'll have a gender, and that is about it. And then I'll discover them usually within the first couple of chapters. I have a fairly good idea. And then I'll stop. And I don't know if you'd call this plotting, Selena, but I stop and I look at the psychology of the character. And sometimes I'll shoot a first chapter off to somebody and go, what do you think? And they'll say, like, Selena once gave me some feedback saying, your female hero has no agency and she's kind of a wet blanket.
I didn't say
With
that
Oh,
exactly.
I'm probably being far more blunt than you. Selena's a lot more diplomatic than me. I'm not diplomatic. If you want diplomacy, go to her, don't go to me. But, essentially the gist was she's flat on the page, which was brilliant. It was brilliant feedback because I changed her and I now love this character so much. But yeah, with a little bit of feedback and in the first few chapters, I start looking at, it looks like they've got anxiety going on here, or it looks like they might have some low level depression. Or if I want to build a backstory, some of their behaviors indicate that they had a parent who had narcissistic personality disorder or something along those lines. And then I'll start diving in. And because I know a great deal about narcissism and depression and all of those mental health conditions, it helps me to add some really cool stuff. Well, what I think is cool anyway, into my heroes. And with the villains in particular, I really love pulling apart the psychology of a bad guy, particularly if
Mm,
they're a serial killer or
mm, mm.
demonic or whatever they might be. I find villains really juicy and meaty and exciting. So yeah, psychology, having trained in all of this mental health stuff, definitely really, really influences and helps my writing. But I love it so much. Like, I love my industry with all of my heart and soul. I love the work that we do. I don't see us represented very well in film or television or in the written word, which is
Mm.
probably why I keep pumping out characters who have strong mental health training, because I want that authenticity. I want that honesty on the page, all of our warts and all of our, shiny bright bits as well. But yeah,
Yep.
I will admit I probably need to stretch a bit when it comes to creating heroes for my stories.
Well, we all have a comfort zone, don't we? You know, that it's the same for everybody. And I think sometimes you just need to write it until it's all written. And then your mind goes, there's something else now. I'm ready for something else. So it's like sometimes those characters just need, or those themes need to be explored from different angles. And I see stories as like a facet, like a diamond. There's facets, and characters the same. It's like there's all of these facets to them. And that's why I think sometimes we've got series with the same characters and we've got themes that go along in that because we haven't finished looking at the different facets of that theme or that character. And until that's done, sometimes there's no way you can move on because the new thing you write is actually a carbon copy of the other thing you wrote in that way because you haven't finished exploring that concept. The carbon copy is not the right word, but like it's another facet of that kind of story or that character that you're developing. That's my
All right, let's
opinion.
wrap up with one more question for both of us. How does that sound?
Okay. Yep. Last one.
All right. So there's something that you introduced me to, which really helped me through some writing challenges that I was facing. And I kind of wanted to bring it up because I know that you love it as much as I do. And you and I were really deeply addicted to it for a while. And it's writing prompts. Would you
Mm.
do me the favor of explaining what that is? Because I will do a very poor job of it. And then maybe we can just relate a couple of experiences to wrap up this getting to know us section. Are you all good for that?
Yep. Yep. So a writing prompt is a character in a situation with a problem and they'll have a genre. So you might have to write in horror and the prompt will be a horror prompt. And it'll say, you the character is in a cave with red eyes all around them. And then you put the timer on for 90 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and you just write. So no more, you don't think, no planning, nothing. It's just words on the page. And you use the prompt as the jumping off point. So you can start with the prompt and write from there, or you don't even have to worry about it. Whatever comes to your mind, just write it down. The whole point of it is to stop you worrying about perfectionism, get over writer's block and get words on the page and have fun. More than anything, to have fun. One of the best fun things is to do a writing prompt with a writing buddy and swap them once you've written them so you can all see what the other one wrote and have a bit of a laugh about it. And these become story seeds that can become short stories, novellas, novels, poetry even. It depends on what you really want to do. But yeah, in essence, that's what a prompt is.
And
Different genres.
I think one of the great things about prompts is it flexes your muscle. I've probably shared this story before, but if I haven't, even if I have, I'm going to share it again. When I started working with Selina, with her as my coach, I hate the term writer's block, but I guess that's what it was. I was really blocked. I was having trouble putting words on the page. I wasn't inspired or excited by my story anymore. And she challenged me to think outside the box. And she said to me, what's one genre that you never thought you'd write in, that you don't read and you don't particularly like? And it's funny because I'm a romance author, but at that time, I did not like romance. So I said, yeah, romance. I don't read it. I don't like it. I'm not interested in it, blah, blah, blah. And Selina set me a goal and she said, all right, go away and write a romance. And I resisted strongly, but I eventually did and it worked. So the book I'd been working on, which was a horror novel, nothing was flowing, but suddenly I was trying to create a romance and the words just fell out of my fingertips, like onto the keyboard. I wrote, I think, 1,000 words in a few short hours, and I was really excited. And progressively, I've fallen deeply in love with the romance genre. I think it's fantastic. Like I said earlier on in this episode of the podcast, I think that in most good stories, a romance is at the core. So I had a zero appreciation for this genre. Now I think the genre is brilliant and I wish it got more respect than it does. But prompts are a similar thing because when Selena was throwing prompts at me, quite often it would be for things I just don't want to write. I don't want to write a mystery. My brain doesn't work that way. Selena is a great mystery writer. She can seed all of these little plot points, which eventually blossom into something amazing so that the reader can discover who the bad person is doing whatever they're doing. My brain does not function that way. But prompts, you'll get, it's a mystery. And here's a sentence which describes the scene, and you've got 5 minutes, go. And it's not like you're not competing and nothing's going to happen to you if you don't do it. You could be a little bit of a pain in the bum and go, no, I'm not going to do this. But it's in your own best interest to do it, and it stretches you. Whether you end up with an idea for a novel that you might write one day or not is beside the point. We would read them we would read stuff back to each other and we would laugh hysterically. And sometimes we would be gobsmacked by how bloody brilliant a
Yeah.
paragraph was that we churned out in just 5 minutes with no time to think. I think that writing prompts, it's like lifting weights. It
Yeah,
exercises
it's a
your
bit of
brain.
a
It makes you better at what you do, I think.
yeah, and I used to do them every morning. Spend 5-10 minutes doing prompt writing, in 90-second or 3-minute lots. And I've got lots of little story starters that when I am not sure what I want to write, I can actually flick back through them and see if something interests me and use it as a story seed and go from there. There's lots of opportunity. And
Yeah, the sweet
I
spot
think,
for me was 5 minutes. I think the shortest amount of time that
mm,
Selena made me do one was maybe 3 minutes. And I found that not as stimulating because I wanted to get stuff on the page. So 5 minutes was sweet because I could get about 2 paragraphs out and feel like I
yeah,
had a story. So, Selena, I think you said just before that you kind of enjoyed like writing for maybe 1 minute and there was a sentence or something that you might get out. For some
yeah,
people, that's
90
going to
seconds.
work. The 90 seconds. There you go. So for some people that might work, but don't be afraid to say, oh, that's too short. Can we do a 3-minute or a 5-minute session? Because you want to get
Even
something.
You can do writing prompts for 30 minutes, like one prompt and just write for 30 minutes. But the whole point of it is just to keep writing. Don't go back and rewrite. Don't go back and edit as you're writing.
No,
Write forward. That's the whole point of it. If you're going to go back and get fussy, then you probably miss the point of doing the prompt writing. you know, as a way of getting unblocked.
All
Well,
right.
thanks,
Well,
Jarryd, for sharing that. That's really great. And thank you for everybody. So,
I guess we're going to wrap up, but just quickly, I wanted to say that we're going to try every now and again, maybe every second episode, maybe every third, to do a little
mhm,
segment called Slap Some Muse on Me. And that's
yeah,
just about inspiring creativity, but we're going to think a little outside the box. So Selina, one of the tools that she uses sometimes is tarot cards. I'm a huge fan of conspiracy theories. I will read about them and they'll often trigger ideas, whether it's UFOs, whether it's, I don't know, whatever it could be. That sort of stuff
lizard
inspires me.
people.
Sorry, lizard people.
Anyone I know about is lizard people.
One of the things I've started to do recently, which we'll also touch on, is I'll work out the star sign of a character that I'm writing, and then I'll go and I'll read up about Aries or Libra or Scorpio, whatever the star sign is. And I'll try and incorporate a bit of that into my good guy or my bad guy, or even a side character who's got a lot of personality. So yeah, we'll throw a few of those at you guys. We won't do it today because we've talked way
No.
too much. But
Yes.
that's the other segment that you'll occasionally see. Did you want to say anything about that?
Oh, no, I'm just looking forward to you doing that at some point in the future. So
Yeah.
tighten our show a bit.
Good luck.
So thanks for sharing a bit of your day or your night with us. We hope that you've enjoyed this show.
We will hopefully see you again soon. So keep spinning those ideas into words or art or whatever your creative outlet is, and keep that sense of wonder alive in your heart and mind.
And if you have enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And please feel free to leave a review.
All right. Stay creative, everyone.
Bye for now.